Hello again, this is Jack Stevenson, back with segment 2 of my keynote presentation on my latest ebook titled Pursuing a Jacques Dalcroze Education Solfège Volume 1. In this and the next two segments, we'll discuss three chapters of Unit 1, Rhythm, Arm Beats, and Psalmization. This segment will cover rhythm and the ancient Greek modes. The central focus on rhythm training is based not on the musical parameter of beat, its multiple and division, but rather on pattern, how it repeats, transforms, transposes, augments, and diminishes. In other words, pattern is the first topic to be covered rather than beat and its multiple and division, since there is no beat without pattern. And as Dalcrozians, we want to provide an experience of a concept first, so rhythm pattern is a great place to begin since there are so many other parameters that can be discovered from it. Let's talk first about the ancient Greek rhythmic modes themselves. There are two interpretations of the modes. One is the accentual syllabic or English tradition, which is defined by duration and used in poetry. The second interpretation is the quantitative or Greek-Roman tradition, which is defined by duration and used in music. We will come back to these two interpretations in a moment. Now, there are three basic types of modes. First, there's the pure modes, which include the dactyl, the anapes, the iamb or iamb, and the trochee or trochee. Then there are the anacrusic modes. Then, finally, there are the composite modes, and there are two types of composite modes. One type is called vertical, and the other type is called horizontal. Okay, so let's first look at the two interpretations. The accentual syllabic. Now, the accentual syllabic, as I said earlier, is used in poetry. So let me read this poem, and I will do it in the dactyl mode. And so it'll go, A is for Amy, who fell down the stairs. B is for Basil, assaulted by bears. C is for Clara, who wasted away. D is for Desmond, thrown out of a sleigh. So you can hear, I'm reading the poem, and you can hear that whole pattern is strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong. And so in the accentual syllabic tradition, this is known as a dactyl. But now let's take the same poem and try to read it in the quantitative tradition, or the Greek-Roman tradition. Notice here, when under the pure rhythmic modes, it says dactylic, and then notice the dac is long, and the tilics are the two shorts. You see, so in the Greek-Roman tradition, we're talking about duration, or length of sound, not necessarily the stress. So let's read this poem again, but let's do it in the dactyl in the quantitative tradition. A is for Amy, who fell down the stairs. B is for Basil, assaulted by bears. So you can hear long, short, short, long, short, short, long, short, short, long. And I can sing it too, so it'd go, and it's perfect for singing. A is for Amy, who fell down the stairs. B is for Basil, assaulted by bears. C is for Clara, who wasted away. D is for Desmond, thrown out of a sleigh. So you can hear that the dactylic, dactylic, dac is not only strong, weak, weak, but it's also long, short, short, long, short, short. Now, actually, for all the pure modes, it's the same. So if I look between the bar lines, I get what the pattern is. Let's look at anapest. Short, short, long, short, short, long. Anapest, anapest. Then we have trochee, trochee, iamb, iamb. Now look right below trochee and iamb, you'll see that there is a 2-to-1 ratio instead of the 3-to-1 ratio. So the 2-to-1 ratio sounds trochee, 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 iamb, 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 iamb. Still all pure rhythmic modes. Now, what makes them pure is the fact that there are two sides to the pattern. If you draw a line straight down the middle, you can see two sides. So the dac is on one side, the tilic is on the other side, or the ana is on one side, the pest is on the other side. Now, if we look at the difference between the two sides, there is a difference. They are not the same. They have to be different. So a pure pattern means that you can draw a line down the middle. So therefore it's divisible by 2. Well, every pattern is divisible by 2. And one side has to be different from the other. Look at the trochees. So if we draw a line between the middle, you see one side has the long and the other side has the short. So these are the pure rhythmic patterns as we know them. Now, the anacrusic modes are in fact the pure patterns, but they are done and performed anacrusically. Let's look at the first one here. I have tillik-dack, tillik-dack, tillik-dack. Notice that if I look between the bar lines, I see that it's really dactyl. Dack, tillik-dack, tillik. But if I read between the slurs, if I read from the slurs, it's tillik-dack, 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 tillik-dack. This is the same truth for it's the same truth for trochee. So if I look here between the bar lines, I have long, short, long, short, long, short, long, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, which Dalcrozians will recognize as a skip pattern. But if I read from the slur to slur, I'm going short, long, 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 which Dalcrozians again will read as a gallop. So there you have either the skip or the gallop. It's the same pattern, trochaic pattern, but it's either done crusically or anacrusically. Now let's look at this a little bit deeper, and you'll see that in the quantitative tradition here, I have tillik-dack, tillik-dack, tillik-dack. And so you can see that it's dactylic because if I look between the bar lines again, I have my long and two shorts. But if I read from the beginning, I'm going to start with the tillik. Now, if I do that in the accentuated tradition, they would call that anapest. Anapest, anapest. I must finish my journey alone. I must finish. Because it starts with the two shorts, that's anapest. If it started with the long, that would be a dactyl like the previous poem. But this is anapest because it starts with the two shorts. So you can see they're exactly the opposite. This is the reason people get so confused about these Greek modes. Because most English-speaking people, for example, know the accentuated one very well because they probably studied that in high school or college when they studied poetry. And the quantitative one was never thought of musically. But the Greeks and the Romans considered these to be short versus long, and the British tradition considered them to be strong versus weak. So in the Shakespeare piece, we have the same thing. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. So chetro, 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 chetro. But the accentuated people would say, I am, I am, I am, I am, da-dum, da-dum. So that gallop pattern, which I was calling anacrusic trochaic for them, is really iambic. Now, let's look at these composite patterns. First one, the vertical. This is a perfect vertical pattern. It's the most famous, and it's called amphibrach. Now, brach, let's do that for, brach stands for short, and ampha means both sides. So we have both sides short. So how did we get both sides short? You can see that one side is different from the other. I'm sorry, one side is not different from the other. If we draw a line right between the quarter note, you can see that the eighth quarter, and then there would be eighth, 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 eighth. So we'd have two eighths on both sides, and so therefore that can't be pure. So this is the composite mode done vertically. How? I am's on top. I am, tro, she, tro, is on the bottom. Now, if we put those two together, we come up with amphibrach, 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 amphibrach. Interesting, because oftentimes people call this amphibrach pattern the syncopated pattern, because you'll hear them do it amphibrach, da 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 da, and they'll do a little da 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 dee, put a stress on the long. Well, actually, we're not really supposed to be performing these that way. The stress always comes after the bar line. So if I'm going to put the stress on the long, I'm artificially doing that and creating a syncopation. Now let's look at some horizontal patterns. This is an interesting one. Notice that it's a double iamb, diam. The di prefix in front of a Greek word means two, so we have two iambs. Diam, diam. Here, the next one, we have ditroche. Well, guess what? There's 2 trochets. It's a double crochet. Crochet, crochet, crochet. Here we have another pattern, Coryam, and it is a mirror image pattern. We have crochet, IM, crochet, IM. And then another mirror image pattern would be antispest, which is IM, crochet, IM, crochet. Now, this next pattern it really isn't a pattern at all. These, when you have like 4 shorts in a row, or 5, a number of shorts in a row, or a number of longs in a row, they're not patterns really. They are substitutions for patterns. If the poem is going along in dactylic mode, and we wanted to sort of like make a break or change in some way, or create some diversity or contrast, we can substitute we can substitute the long for 2 short. So instead of dactylic, dactylic, we could have tetrabrock, tetrabrock, dactylic, tetrabrock, dactylic, long. So you can substitute shorts or longs and for the patterns themselves. And the dispondy, or the despondy, whichever the way you want to say it, would be the same. So spondy itself is actually 2 longs, and dispondy was then twice 2 longs. So we have 4 longs. So that is used as a substitute pattern as well. So the patterns really have to have a variety of shorts and longs. When you put shorts together and longs together in a string, you're just really creating substitutes for those patterns themselves. The Greeks did this all the time. So that concludes this segment. So stay tuned for segment 3, where we'll discuss arm beats. Thanks so much.